from Ecorhythm, and we are about to go live onto the floor with our good friend, Eric Stromquist. He'll be interviewing Terry Casey from Interstellar. So we're getting ready our link.
Okay, cool. So we good right here? Hey, Jerry, thanks a lot. I am here with Terry Casey from Intellastar. And Jerry, I got to tell you, man, this guy is the most uniquely qualified guy to sort of talk about this conference, in my opinion. And Terry, to sort of set the context for Intellastar and what you guys are all about, I just got to ask you, tell me about your history.
Oh gosh, how long have you got? In UK, I started a controls company called Trend. Currently, they've only got about 45% of the UK market. So that was a fairly successful business. I've done some stuff based on Echelon stuff. I was the president of Tridium for Europe, Middle East, Africa for 12 years. I was with Pacific Controls developing all their analytic platforms and their service delivery platforms and their service delivery. And now I'm met up with some of my old team again and some new people, and we've been doing Intellastar for the last couple of years, which is good.
Well, yeah, I want to talk about Intellastar. I want to talk a little bit about your team because it's a little bit like, if you use a basketball metaphor, it's like putting LeBron James, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and you name it, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on the same team. Talk about your team. I mean, obviously, you're Magic Johnson, but what about the rest of the team?
Well, I didn't thank you, but I'm not sure I am. I'm not that tall. But the rest of the team in there. So we got Jerry Frank, who's the founder of Tridium, who's a fairly well-known character around the place. We've got Andy, who's one of his technically savvy sons, who's doing a lot of the software. And then our technology is in part based on Sky Foundry. And Sky Foundry technology is the source of Brian Frank, which is the other thing. So we're heavily involved in the Frank dynasty. And then the other part of it, which is really quite interesting, is not from the building automation space. We've got Steve Lynch, who was the co-founder of a company called Energy Curtailment Specialists. And they were or still are, I'm told, the biggest load management, load curtailment, demand response company in this country, and which is the biggest demand response market in the world. So Steve brings insights in from the energy and the demand response side. We bring in knowledge about buildings and technology and things. And it's a really actually interesting marriage of capabilities and skills.
So you get like 10 geniuses and put them in a room and you come up with Intellastar. So what makes your system different, or how do you guys approach it differently maybe?
Well, there's two parts of it there. One is we're trying to make initially buildings a lot smarter, a lot more capable, so that they basically use less energy and cost less to service and give better experiences. And there's lots of people around in this conference doing things like that. Whether they're doing it well or badly is for others to judge, but to do those things. So we bring in, on top of the standard building automation systems, we bring in first energy information, energy analysis, which is your starting point, but doesn't get you very far. It's like accounting. You need it, but it doesn't deliver you profit. It just measures it at the end of the day. And M&T systems or monitoring targeting systems are much the same. They keep count. You need them, but they don't make it better by themselves. So finding out what's going wrong in the building, analytics is now being shown to find those things if it's properly applied. And so we can find the things which are typically making the building work inefficiently. We can help the service processes by pinpointing what the problems are. And that's going to lead to a lot of good efficiency. We also build in things like make the controls better, which I term optimization. And sometimes it's true optimization, and sometimes it's just putting some smarter control in the place. But that can be very effective as well. But the bit I find interesting, and the bit I'm getting increasingly engaged with, is making the building a full member of the smart electricity grid. And the electricity business here is getting more and more complex and requires different characteristics of its users. And bearing in mind, buildings use way more than half of all the electric energy produced in the country. We've got to actually incorporate buildings into that. The smart grid part of it is that people traditionally have been doing what's called capacity-based demand response, which is largely an insurance program or to meet the FERC regulations of saying, I've got to have a margin. And they call it hopefully never and maybe once a year or something like that. We're now moving into fully dynamic things where there's peak pricing, there's time of use pricing, there's proper automatic demand response, particularly here in California. And we have the requirement to make the building a responsive load. And then you couple in microgrids, being both solar generation on the building, the roof is a good place to put it, and some battery storage. And suddenly as a control engineer, I think, hey, this problem's fun. I've now got to optimize. I've got the sources and sinks of energy. I can predict when it's going to be there. I know what the price or the requirements are from utility. Now I've got to balance all these things out, and I've got to get this building to respond so that it's not just minimizing the number of kilowatt hours, but we want to minimize the cost of that energy, and we want to make the building a proper member so that it responsibly can mean that we're using more of the green and lean energy and less of the the fossil fuel stuff around the place. And I find that quite a fascinating new dimension that we've got to play with.
Well, I do too, and you've been around the world, and we hear the concept of the net zero energy building, maybe even a building that is putting energy back on the grid, and so that seems like that's doable with technology like yours.
Well, you need technology. If you're going to do net zero, you've got to make the building adaptive. So that's the current thing, and the energy industry is getting its act together to give pricing and other mechanisms to people to make that economic. And then ultimately, yeah, you may even be able to get it down to net zero. Net zero, of course, is deceptive because it means over a 12-month period. Yeah. So at any particular time, you're going to be using a chunk, and you're going to have to organize that. So I think the bit we're bringing in, certainly the analytics and the energy analysis are important. They're not very common yet across the place, and they're getting better understood. But I think that the next stage is going to be that we're going to have to make buildings which are intelligent enough to be responsible and responsive loads to the grid and be proper members there.
You can dress up somebody who's maybe not that attractive and make them look good, but it's better to start when they look good at the beginning, and you can make them better. So the building's got to be built properly, is what I'm saying.
The buildings, yes, indeed. I mean, and the basic build standards. I'm staggered here that I go to good places and pay lots of dollars to stay in a hotel which has still got single glazing, and all the heat and the cool go running in and out. But that's because I come from a place where they've upped those standards considerably. But whatever the building quality is, we can still make it behave in the best way that building can. It's a lot easier than trying to put in fancy retrofits, and usually has a lot better payback.
So look, one thing I want to say about you guys too, and for our audience out there might not know, being a controls guy, I can tell you it's a little bit like data. You put garbage in, garbage out. So with the all-star team that these guys have, I mean, when you're setting a controller up, even if you can program it, there's a lot of know-how that goes into your controllers that maybe others don't have.
Yeah, so that is true. The tendency is with controls is that since we went many years ago to programmable and DDC controls, then the controls installer and integrator can do pretty much what they want to do. But there have become established methods and techniques about what you do, and putting in systems which have got responsive demand and things which is where you've got, say, the hot and cold water systems or the air systems respond to the loads, so you've got interactive things. They're getting better understood. But to do some of the things that we're just talking about, we have to actually impart the expertise to actually understand how the application works, to help them build the algorithms. So it's rather fun for me because we're actually getting, as a company, we're doing the pilot studies, we're doing the pilot buildings, we're experimenting, we're working with some academic type people, not just our own little brain trust, to develop some techniques which frankly are way beyond things that buildings have typically seen, and I've only seen being operated in petrochem facilities, which is where I came from a long time ago. And other highfalutin things like jet engines and the like. So we're bringing some novel expertise and techniques into this to make it better, because we can't do it with the way we used to do things.
Oh, absolutely. And so I want to sort of dovetail into that. We're hearing a lot about artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. And I think artificial intelligence starts with intelligence and then maybe learns from there. But how do you see artificial intelligence maybe with what we're going to be with smart buildings and smart building controllers?
Yeah, it's a very interesting point. And the initial plenary session here, one of the guys up there made some very good points about what AI was and what it isn't. I think it's another one of these terms which is getting a little bit overused, and it's being used loosely. And something which is a control system is just going, well, is that artificial intelligence? True neural networking has a long, long way to go. Self-learning systems, a long way to go before we're going to see them applied to buildings. There are other problems that we're going to solve with that type of stuff, which has got higher opportunity than that yet. So we're quite a few years away from that here.
Very, very cool. So, Terry, man, it's so great to catch up with you and talk with you.
It's always great, Eric.
Yeah, it is. So how do our viewers and listeners find out more about you? What's the best website to go to?
Well, if you go to Intellastar.com and follow the links there, there's various bits of resources of stuff we've tried to put on to be helpful to people about the Internet of Things and buildings, and other things about some smart grid, or follow the link to me and have a dialogue. Yeah, we're always open for that.
Very cool. Give my best to Jerry and Brian and the rest of the team, and thank you so much. Jerry, back to you.